Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Kuf Samach Zayin Sif Vov. Says the Mechaba, Yoichel Miyad, a person after he makes the bracha of Hamotzi, he should eat straight away. V'lo yasiach ben bracha lachil, and he shouldn't talk between making the bracha of Hamotzi and eating the bread. V'im sach, and if he did talk, tzorech lachzor v'levarich, he's got to go back and make the bracha again. Elim kein hoyse hasicha bedvarim me'inyan dvarim shemevarchin olav. Unless the talk, the conversation, the speech that he made was to do with the dvarim shemevarchin olav. It's something to do with the suda kagoin sheberach alapas. For example, he made the bracha of Hamotzi for kodim she'ochal, and before he managed to eat anything, Oma haviu melach, bring salt, a lifton, or some sort of relish. Tznu leploni lechol, give to so and so to eat. Tznu lemeichel behema, give the animals to eat, because you're not allowed to eat before you give the animals. These sort of things, because all of those conversations, all of that speech is relevant to the suda, shach to the suda, and therefore is not considered a hefsek. Umikol Malcolm, says the Ramah, lechatchila lo yafsik klal. Of course, ideally, you should not be mafsik at all. V'ha dimsach dvarim betelim tzarich lachza v'levarich. That which we say, that if his person spoke dvarim betelim, between the bracha of Hamotzi and eating the bread, that tzarich lachza levarich hainu davka shesoch kodim she'ochel haboitzeya. That's specifically if he spoke before the guy who made Hamotzi and ate, before he ate anything. Aval achakach le'avasicha hefsek. But if the guy making the motzi, the boitzeya, he makes the bracha and he eats something, and then other people speak before they actually eat the bread, even though the others haven't eaten yet, they've already been yotze the bracha from the eating of the boitzeya, but they don't all need to eat from his bread. But you just do it for chibur mitzvah, and therefore it would not be considered a hefsek. Okay, let's do the Mishnah Berurah on that. Sif Kotzen Lamed Dalet. Yochel Miyad. So the Mechaba says that as soon as you make the bracha, you should eat straight away. Because you can't really even forget speaking, but you can't even sit there in silence. Once you've made Hamotzi, you can't just sort of sit there waiting before you eat. Even the amount of time it takes Kedei Dibur. Kedei Dibur is a few seconds. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Alecha Rabbi Omoiri, which is, how long does that take? A couple of seconds. So even that you shouldn't wait. So as soon as you make the bracha of Hamotzi, you should eat straight away. Because it'll come in Reish Vav, Sif Gimel Ein Sham. Sif Kotzen Lamed Hei, V'lo Yasiach. And you shouldn't talk until you've eaten. Explains the Mishnah Berurah. When can you start speaking? Only after you've eaten some part of the bread and you've swallowed it. You see people sometimes don't quite do this. You shouldn't talk with your mouth full, but sometimes they're eating and they're actually they're talking straight away. But at least lechatchila you should have a kazayis. But even if you don't have a kazayis, you should at least swallow some of the bread. That's what he's saying here. And you've chewed and you've swallowed some of the bread. That if you just taste it, if you don't actually swallow it, you don't even need a bracha. So you see clearly that the bracha really is on the swallowing of the food. And so too, if there are lots of people sitting at the table, and each person has got their own roll, their own slice of bread, and they're making the bracha for themselves, don't say amen to somebody else's bracha before you've eaten your own bread. But if a person, he did speak whilst he was chewing the bread, before he swallowed it, regarding matters that are not relevant to the Suda. It's a question whether or not you have to make a bracha again. You just sort of didn't, just some of the juice and the liquids in your mouth. These you don't need to make a bracha again. Omnom ein tzarich sheyichel dafka shir kazayas kodem shidaber. You don't need to have a whole kazayas before you're allowed to speak. Ta'afilim ochel rak pachas mikazayas acha bracha chashiva achil inyan zeh to mutar ledaber achakach im mutzarich lekach. That even if you ate a little bit of the bread and you swallowed it, then you've got the green light to speak. But b'diavad you swallowed some of the bread, that's enough. Like I just said. Okay, lamed vav. Ve'im soch, and if a person did speak, and that interestingly, afilu teva achas. So if you sat in silence, if you look at where in footnote number 27, he just speaks it out a bit. Shedavka b'shtika kosav lekamon sheyeshir shel kadei sheda shalom rav. If a guy makes hamotzi and then he sits there, the time it takes to say shalom aleichem Rabbi Omeiri, that's considered a hefsek. But when it comes to speaking, even less than that, says the Mishnah Berurah, afilu teva achas, that's considered a hefsek. Again, a word which is not to do with the meal. But however, in contrast, if he speaks matters that do pertain to the meal, then it's not considered a hefsek. Says Mishnah Berurah Lamed Zayin, me'inyan devarim afilu hefsek b'dvarim she'en l'tzorech prus hamotzi, even if it's not to do with the actual hamotzi. Rak me'inyan minyoni tzorech yesuda is to do somehow to the meal. V'afilu diber lahavi hakelim. For example, he says, I haven't got a fork. Yeah, I haven't got a spoon or a plate. She'en tzorech yesuda lo have a hefsek. That would not be considered a hefsek. Okay. Sheberech alapas. He makes a bracha on the bread. Even our bread, which is sort of has got salts and things in it, it's tasty bread. Where we said previously that you don't have to wait for salt or relish or whatever. So if a guy makes a hamotzi and he says, "Hey, where's the salt?" or "Is there any hummus?" or something like that. So that is not considered a hefsek. You shouldn't have done it. Really, you should just eat the bread. But even bread, which doesn't need salt, like our bread, it's already got salt in it. Even that, if it's mitzarchi hatzuda, that's not considered a hefsek. Okay. For example, he says, Tnu pleini le'echol, you give so-and-so something to eat. Bein oni, whether the person is a poor person, or bein oshir, if he's wealthy, even if he doesn't say it's given from the hamotzi, and give him a loaf of bread from himself, that's all part of the meal, and even that is not considered a hefsek. Or Michael Behema, he says, go give the dog to eat, go give the animal to eat. That's also Gamkein, says Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Mem. Gamkein minyone sudahu. That's also in the Indian of the Suda. To osalitim kodem shiyit in the behemoths. The halacha is you're not allowed to eat before you fed the animals. V'ochalto v'savato v'rachta. What's it? The pasuk says you got to give to. What's lashon? Behemtecha. This is in the Shema, the second paragraph of the Shema, that you give the animals and then you give and then you eat yourselves. V'ochalto, yeah. What? The Esev besotcha levintecha v'chalta v'savata. Yeah, it's in the second paragraph of Shema. Esev levhemtecha and then v'chalta v'savata. Okay, kasa maganab. You can drink first, by the way. You're allowed to drink before you give your animals, but eating you've got. It says achila. Kasa maganab ram b'shem sefer chasidim. The lishtos adam. Oh, it says lishtos adam kodim lebehema. That you can drink before you give the animals. How do I know that? What's the source? First of all, you drink, and then I'll give the camels to drink. Okay. Okay, lo yafsik klal mem aleph. This is going on the Ramah. Okay, so the Ramah says, but ideally, as we know, once you've made the brach of hamotzi, then you should eat the bread straight away without any hefsek. Even if it's to do with the tzarech yitzida, you should try and avoid that. B'chol elu hadvarim. Va'afilu im hoya pas she'ein noki. Even if the bread is not noki, i.e. it's unsalted, the tzarech la'melech and you need salt, gam kein also lahafsik kodim shiv lema'at, you shouldn't be mafsik at all. You just have a little bit of the bread that you shouldn't swallow it, and not to be mafsik. Shesoch. Okay, now this is going on the continuation of the Ramah. The Ramah said, tzarech lachse v'levarich, that if a person did speak, then he needs to go make a bracha again. So this is she'ai dafke shesoch kodim she'ochla b'tzeah. He ate before the b'tzeah ate. Says the Mishnah Berurah, If the boitzeah ate before the person making the hamotzi, if he ate before, if he spoke before he managed to eat, then he's got to make a new bracha. Aval achakach. So this is going on the next bit. Aval achakach lehavasich hefsek. Once he eats something, then it's not considered a hefsek. Pirush afilu hasich achakach hashemim v'yotzim bebrichosoi kodim shetoamoi gam kein ein kped b'diavad. You hear that? So the guy makes hamotzi, and he eats something, and somebody else should eat the bread straight away because he's being motzi them. But instead he speaks. So b'diavad, he doesn't have to make a new bracha. Why? Because the fellow was motzi him, and the person who made it, he actually ate straight after he made the bracha. Now we're going to see but of course, ideally, all the people sitting around the table who have been yotze from the bracha of the person making the motzi, they should have eaten straight away. They shouldn't be speaking before they eat themselves. Now, v'hine, says the Mishnah Berurah, zeu rak das haramah. This, what we just said, i.e., that if the person making hamotzi makes the bracha and eats something, and then tonight, we're sitting at the Shabbos Suda, and the person makes hamotzi, and then you take up your piece of challah and you speak beforehand, but the eved you don't need to make the bracha again. That is the opinion of the Ramah. Aval, says the Mishnah Berurah, kimat kol ha'achronim cholkim olav. Kimat, all the achronim argue with the Ramah, or svir lehu, they are of the opinion, the person listening is no better than the person who makes the bracha himself, just like the person who made the bracha has got to make the bracha again if he was mafsik, if he spoke between making the bracha and eating. So too, that if they speak before they eat the challah, they should make a bracha again. V'da'od, and no more. If the person making the bracha spoke before he tasted any of the bread, even if the shomim, the people listening, they didn't speak, they're no longer yotze from the bracha. The bracha was invalid. It's questionable exactly what one should do midina. So if you look at 36, so lemaisa, what should we do? So he says lemaisa in 36, das hagon Orach Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg, shahoil v'nisha Mishnah Berurah b'tzarchian. Since the Mishnah Berurah leaves it as a sofek, as a tzarchian, sofek brachas lahakel v'chein posku ha ben ishchai v'kafachayim shelo levarich mishum shekach posku kama achronim. Okay, so just to summarize, lachatchila, when you make hamotzi, you should eat straight away, and you should not talk until you swallow, ideally a kazayas, or at least a little bit of the bread. And now, what about the other people around the table? So the Ramah is of the opinion that if a person heard the bracha, and the guy who made the bracha ate a little bit of the bread, then even though you spoke before you had some of the bread, then you don't need to make the bracha again. Other the Achronim argue about it. Tzarich Iyun Ladina, Reb Scheinberg and other poskim say that Sofik bracha is lahakel, and therefore you don't need to make the bracha again.
So can I just clarify which bracha we're talking about?
Hamotzi.
Right.
The bracha of Hamotzi.
Wash again.
No, the bracha of Hamotzi. We've got time still. Let's do. Yeah, we will. No. No, but there hasn't been a hesach hadas so much, I don't think, of needing to wash again.
If they're waiting for Torah Dibur, more than Torah Dibur, because if you've got a lot of people at the meal, then by the time the last person gets the challah.
Yeah, but that we only start the Torah Dibur clock if there's a proper hefsek. But if everyone's sitting around, that's all considered. That's just how it happens. That's where you cut the challah, I eat it, I pass it around. That's the tzarchei suda. That's just how you do it. But if you're being mafsik by doing something else, then that's when you start the Toich Kedei Dibur button. Okay, Zayin. Reuven. Sif Zayin. Reuven shahaya noitel yodov la'achila. Interesting case. Now this is quite nogea. I think Shaul, you spoke about it last week. Reuven shahaya noitel yodov la'achila. Reuven washes his hands to wash. For Yaakov haya mevarech hamotzi. And Yaakov is making hamotzi. V'nischaven la'hotzi hashomim. So imagine the balabas, he's sitting there, he makes motzi, and he is motzi everyone else. And there are always a few people, the stragglers, he didn't wait for everyone to wash and to come and sit down. And Reuven washed his hands la'achila, but Yaakov, who is making the hamotzi, had the kavanah to motzi everyone. Va'achakach nigev Reuven yodov, and then afterwards Reuven comes and dries his hands. Ubeirach al Netilas Yadayim. Lo have a hefsek. That's not considered a hefsek. For Yoitze v'birchas Yaakov, and he is Yoitze still with the bracha of Yaakov. Ein tzarich lachsav v'vorech birchas hamotzi. He doesn't need to make a new bracha. So very interesting. So even though he was still online, he washed his hands. He hadn't yet dried his hands, and the guy, the balabos, is saying hamotzi lechem in haaretz. Even though he hasn't yet made the bracha of al Netilas Yadayim, he is covered by the hamotzi. So it's a nice quiz question. When can you have a situation where you make a hamotzi before Netilas Yadayim? The answer is when you've washed your hands and the guy being motzi, the person, the balabais, whoever it is makes the hamotzi. You listen. You've been yotze with that bracha. You then make your own Netilas Yadayim and then dry your hands, and you can sit down and have the bread. That's really what the halach, this halacha zayin is saying. Let's do the Mishnah Berurah on this.
Even if you haven't washed your hands yet.
We'll see. It says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Mem Dalet Lahitzi Hashoimim V'gam Hashoimim Kivnu Lotzes V'bracha. So the people listening have in mind to be Yotze. V'achakach Nigev. Now, Hu Adin K'shekol HaNetila Birchas HaNetilas Yadayim Hoya Achakach. If the entire Netila, that's your point, Eli, yeah? Even if the entire Netila even if the washing and the bracha was after the guy said the hamotzi, gam kein yotze b'di'evet. Amazing. Because that's not considered a hefsek. So it's an amazing thing. The guy makes the bracha of hamotzi. You're still online, and you've sashal. This is really your case. So this is a limud zchus for what we spoke about. That the person making the hamotzi, you're still online. You haven't yet washed Netilas Yadayim, and you've heard the guy saying the hamotzi, and then you wash Netilas Yadayim, and you make the bracha. That's not considered a hefsek because it's the tzarech of the suda. And it's not ideal. I think you should wash and make sure everyone's ready. But b'di'evet it would work. Gam ken yotze b'di'evet, yeah. V'chol zeh lo have a hefsek. To have it tzarech sud v'chanal. V'lo noket loshen zeh lahiris lanu. T'im birchas al Netilas Yadayim hoye b'shah sheYaakov berach hamotzi d'lo yotza. We're just saying that if he is saying his Netilas Yadayim at the time that Yaakov is saying the bracha of hamotzi, then it's not yotze. Why? Because you can't make a bracha of it's shomer ka'ina. So I'm listening to your hamotzi, so it's as if I'm talking. But if I'm saying al Netilas Yadayim at that time, then it doesn't work. Right? V'oz shomer ka'ina. And due to our many sins, harben nichshalim b'zeh b'leil Shabbos kodesh. Because during Kiddush they could be doing other things or whatever, but it's as if you're talking. You've got to, in order for Kiddush to work, it's through Shomer Ka'ina. I've got to listen and have kavanah to what the person is saying. I can't be doing other things. Okay, Sif got to Memvav. Let's just finish this Sif. Ubeirach al Netilas Yadayim v'af agav the kaim lon Shomer Ka'ina ukvar posek Magen Avraham le'el b'simen kufnan ches Sif Yudalev t'im kaidim shebirach al Netilas Yadayim beirach hamotzi lo yuchel levarech al Netilas Yadayim. Even though the Magen Avraham has said previously that if you went ahead and said hamotzi without saying al Netilas Yadayim, it's too late to say al Netilas Yadayim. This case is different. Shani hachad lo nigav yodov, because you haven't yet dried his hands. You haven't yet finished the mitzvah. But if you've already dried your hands, in other words, just to summarize, very interesting and quite a relevant sif. If tonight, Shabbos, Friday night, the balabas is sitting down, he makes hamotzi, and there are people who have not yet even washed their hands, but they hear the hamotzi and they have kavanah lishmoya. They have been yotze the bracha of hamotzi. They then go wash their hands. They say the bracha of Netilas Yadayim, and they can go and sit down and have the hamotzi and eat. And they don't need the bracha. Amazing. However, if they're saying the bracha on Netilas Yadayim at the time when the person is saying hamotzi lechem haaretz, they're not. They've got to say their own hamotzi, right? And then finally, if he has finished, if the a person has washed his hands and then dried them, but he hadn't yet said the bracha of hamotzi, he's finished the mitzvah, and then the person says hamotzi lechem haaretz, then you don't say Netilas Yadayim, because then you've missed it. Say that clear? Okay.